Hi, you've clicked on to today's tropical tidbit for Wednesday. Over here in the Atlantic main of traction, Invest 99L in the Northwest Caribbean. You can see well-defined circulation with this. We go over to the water vapor. We have some shear and dry air impending on the system over here, getting punched in from the west, and you can see that if we zoom in on the visible exposed circulation center with convection currently off to the northeast. But you can see it getting well organized over here in compared to yesterday, at least. To look at the well-defined circulation, starting to try to get some banding in here to the east of the system. And why this isn't a tropical depression, I'm not sure. It's pretty darn close. Probably should get labeled later today. Well-defined circulation here. You can see it's starting to drift a little bit south or southeast, and this is going to be meandering around slowly for the next couple of days. If we look at the water vapor over here, you can see the still image now. We look at this, we see the dry air off to the northwest, and we wonder, haven't we seen this before recently? And yeah, go back 8 days ago. Remember who this was? This was Paula developing down here near the northeast Nicaragua and Honduras coast. And look at all the dry air, solid black colors over here to the north of the system. And that's even worse dry air than what we're seeing with Invest 99L right now. And this happened before, and you can see that Paula, remember, came up and became a Cat 2 hurricane and then took off and weakened. And this is illustrating the point that although that conditions look rather detrimental for this system right now, it's not impossible for these things to get going. And if you can get a core over the center of this, it will want to strengthen steadily until land or wind shear and dry air finally get to it. And of course, Paula developed in far worse conditions than this in terms of the dry air in the proximity to the system, so it's something we need to keep an eye on. And besides, conditions are going to improve markedly in terms of dry air and upper level conditions around 99L over the next few days. This is the GFS 96 hours. This would be Sunday. Notice the anticyclone over the western Caribbean. The storm would be somewhere in this area meandering around. What I want you to notice is if we look again at the water vapor, see where the trough is right now, and this is the upper airflow. Notice how the upper airflow coming into the base of the trough from the northwest. Remember, the upper flow coming into the base of a trough has to slow down, and when it slows down, that means air has to pile up, and in the upper atmosphere, that means it has nowhere to go but to sink. And as the air sinks, it warms and dries, and you put dry air then right in the path where the storm is trying to go. And this is a very bad situation for developing storm. Plus, with the upper flow coming out from the southwest over here, you lower pressures out away from the storm, creating competition away from where the storm is trying to go, which is this way. And these are both bad things for a developing system. However, if we go out to Sunday, remember this ridge is going to replace the trough as it lifts out. You're going to get ridging over the top, and you're going to have the storm in here, and now instead of dry air and convergent flow aloft in the path of the storm, you have a divergent flow, lowering of pressures, and likely more moisture in here as opposed to the dry air we're seeing now, which will probably make the environment not perfectly moist. We still got large-scale sinking trying to slowly get reversed by the SOI burst that I was talking about a few days ago, but it's going to be more moist in here than it is right now, and conditions will improve. And the ridge coming in here forces the subtropical jet a little bit farther north, so you reduce the shear in here as well. You get a little bit more of a symmetrical anticyclone over top, and this will provide some better ventilation for the system as it comes through this area. And you can see the hurricane models jumping all over this idea that it will be able to strengthen. This is the HWRF, and the GFDL is out of its mind, absolutely insane, going with the Cat 5 west of the western tip of Cuba, going through the Yucatan Channel into the Gulf of Mexico. This is completely unrealistic. Don't believe it for a minute. This is going to scare the heck out of the Eastern Gulf residents. It's interesting to see how the GFDL and the HWRF have in complete agreement on the track. It's actually pretty remarkable how close they are to each other, but I think this is again too poleward. Seeing a Cat 5 coming this way towards southwest Florida is not going to happen. Don't worry. Don't believe these things. Their poleward tracks are again going to be biased, and their intensity is way off, but it does show the potential, if this gets a core, that we could see a hurricane, and perhaps a potent one if it gets time over water. If it's in the Caribbean, if it's in the Gulf of Mexico, it'll probably be sheared and weakened before any kind of a landfall. But if it's down here, these folks are going to have to keep an eye on this. You can see the models finally starting to come around to the idea this is going to come west and then try to come back up. Remember, the idea from the very beginning was that this would develop down here, come to the north, take a detour to the west, and then try to come up again And this is the general idea that's going on. We're having a little bit of a loop. It's going to come probably down like this through the Yucatan, and then somewhere in this area is going to try to get pulled out eventually towards the northwest and eventually the northeast. These models might concern the northwest Gulf residents, but don't worry. If these were coming up, if this storm was coming up like this, you'd have a trough coming across, and this would come off to the northeast and affect New Orleans eastward only. The details, of course, are going to have to be worked out. The models are in bad agreement, but you can see them coming around to the logical idea of things, not the way they thought. Remember, we had them diving it down here, dying, no development. Now we have development. We pretty much have a tropical depression out here, likely to acquire the name Richard within the next few days. So you can see that, again, logical reasoning about the weather pattern prevailed over the models. We're getting development. We have it way up here when the models had it down here. Logic, common sense, beats the computer every time. And finally, over here in the Western Pacific, this is Typhoon Maggie, west of the Philippines over here. And remember, a couple days ago I was mentioning how this might try to recurve and the official track would be too far south. And I don't care about the forecast so much as that the fact that it is trying to recurve now, moving straight north, is a great teleconnection over here to this coming across, moving west, and then trying to sneak up into the weakness over here down the road, and the typhoon teleconnects with that very nicely. I was watching to see if this would indeed happen, see if it really would recurve, and that really sets up this pattern down the road for this to try to come out. So this is going to get drawn north eventually. We're going to try to put moisture into here. Again, with the subtropical jets screaming across, it's going to be hard to get any kind of a strong system to make landfall in here, but it is something to keep an eye on, and certainly the folks in this area of the world could be dealing with a stronger storm than the United States would be dealing with, so these folks need to be watching even closer than that. And again, we will have to be watching the Central Atlantic and Eastern Caribbean for a lowering of pressures next week after this system gets out of here. And if we get this named Richard, then we could potentially have Sherry trying to develop somewhere in this area and coming in like this from the southeast, and might be a true intertropical convergence zone or tropical wave development coming from east to 60 west, which will be interesting to see during the end game of the season. So lots to continue to watch for the next couple of weeks. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.